May the 4th be with you. To celebrate Star Wars Day this year, I'm going to be drawing Kanan Jarrus and Hera Syndulla, one of my favorite Star Wars couples. I'm going to be using a free drawing program called Fire Alpaca. I started off with a rough sketch to map out where the two characters are going to be standing. I decided to draw Kanan and Hera because Star Wars Rebels is one of my favorite shows ever since I started watching it back in, wait, give me a second here. The first season came out in 2014. I don't know if I watched it from exactly the start, but pretty much. Anyway, I started drawing in more of the details, like the nose, mouth, eye, etc. I don't worry about things being too exact, because if anything looks a little wonky, I usually just clean it up when I'm doing the line art. I still don't think I've exactly perfected the profile view head, but I am a lot better than I used to be, and I feel like for this picture, they turned out okay. I'm especially happy with the way Kanan's head turned out in the end. Hera's I'm a little less happy with. It doesn't exactly look like Hera, but in the end, you can tell who the character is, especially when I add all the color and stuff. So it's not too bad. Oh boy. Hera's looking a little bit like a giraffe here, so I will use one of my best friends, the selection tool, and move things around a bit so the anatomy looks a little less strange. I'm also going to turn her head up a little bit so she's not just staring at his nose. Then I sketch in the rest of the details. It's been a while since I've drawn a Twi'lek, so I wasn't sure if I could get the Leku to look right, but in the end I think they look pretty good. Now Kanan's beard, though, I don't usually draw bearded characters, so I was worried it would look weird, but I think it looks pretty good actually. Drew in the rest of his hair, changed things with the selection tool again, like I said, one of my best friends. Then I started drawing the arms. I decided to give them a pose where they're holding hands, which I don't know if that was the best idea, since when it comes to hands, they're kind of difficult to draw. So they may look a little funny, but you know what? We're not gonna talk about the hands. They look a little better when I do the line art anyway. I moved things around a little bit, changed the size of some things, just tried to make it look more normal, more proportionate. That's why one of the reasons I prefer digital art to traditional art is it's a lot easier to move things around and change the size of things, especially when you have access to the selection tool. When I'm doing traditional art, I gotta, erase the whole thing and draw it again. So I do prefer to do it this way. When drawing in the details, I wasn't exactly sure if I got it right because the reference I was using wasn't the highest quality, so it was kind of hard to see the little details in things like that. But it didn't have to be exact. I was going for a more simple illustration, so if a few things were left out or didn't look exactly right, it didn't really matter as much to me. So yeah, I just finished up the sketch. I did draw in the little pattern on Hera's Leku, just so I could have an idea of what it should look like a little bit later. Then I started on the line art. I do tend to be a little bit free with the line art, not going exactly with the sketch I drew underneath, just doing what feels right. Kanan's nose gave me a bit of trouble for some reason. It didn't look quite right, so I ended up adjusting it a little later. Maybe that's why Hera was staring at it. Anyway, I drew in the rest of the line art. Didn't really have too much difficulty for that part. proceeds to redraw the same line 100 times. That's pretty normal though. I do use the undo button a lot when drawing lines, especially lines for the hair, because I want it to look like it has a certain type of flow. To be honest, line art is actually my least favorite part of drawing. I do really like sketching because it's a lot less pressure on me to make things look exact. The problem is I like to make really clean looking art, so I do need to have that line art in order to get the look that I like. As you just saw, I did end up adjusting the size of the hand a little bit when I saw it wasn't looking right. So sometimes I do jump back and forth between the line art and the sketch layer if while I'm doing the line art I see that things aren't looking quite right. I guess it's something that I could avoid if I did clean up my sketch a little bit before doing the line art, but since it's pretty easy for me to like adjust things, change the size of things, it's not something I really worry about too much, so I just end up going off the loose sketch, and if things don't look right, I just change them later. Here I proceed to draw a bunch of wonky circles. I don't really use the circle tool when I draw. I feel like hand drawing the shapes gives it like its own feel. Though if I did use the circle tool, I admit it would look better, I guess, in some ways. But having it not be an exact circle gives it like a little bit of flair, a little personal touch. I'm talking so much about circles. You probably don't care that much. I went in, drew the rest of the lines. Don't really have that much to say for this part. Just finished up the line art, drew the other hand. Struggle a little bit, as you can see, but it's good enough. It's good enough for me. That's all that matters. Finished up with the last few lines. Zooming out, I did notice Kanan's nose still didn't look quite right, so I did this last adjustment, which I think did a lot, helped it a lot to look like Kanan's nose. And that's when I finished the line art and moved on to coloring. I usually like to work one character at a time with the base colors when I'm doing a picture with multiple characters. So I started off with Kanan. I usually do start with the skin tone and then fill in the hair and everything. I tried to get the colors as close as I could from the reference I was looking at. I didn't use the color picking tool or anything, but I think when I eyeballed it, I got pretty close. When I compared them, it looked good to me. So I did kind of struggle a little bit of what was what color. Like I said before, my reference wasn't the highest quality. Next time I should probably use a higher quality reference. But pretty sure I got the colors right. When I drew in the scar that goes over his eyes, I did use the smudge tool a little bit just to make it look a little less harsh before I moved on to coloring Hera. Now, for Hera's outfit, I did struggle the most with trying to see what was what color. In the end, I think I got it accurate. If not, I apologize. I did my best, and you know what? Maybe she has different outfits with slightly varying coloring. How could you know? Anyway, I filled in the colors for her outfit. I did end up changing them a few times to get closer to what I thought I was seeing on the reference. In the end, It doesn't matter if it's exact or not. It's fan art. It doesn't need to look exactly like the character, it just needs to be recognizable, I think. This is the first time I've drawn Hera and Kanan, so I'm sure in the future, if I draw them again, I'll get it more accurate, get all the details to look more correct. But for my first try, I think I did okay. Finished off the coloring by adding the little design on Hera's Leku before I made a new layer clipped to all the base colors to start doing the shading. Now, when I do the shading, I usually use this dark magenta color or a dark teal depending on what I'm shading. I use magenta for warmer colors, like the skin tone here, and the teal on cooler colors, like the green of Kanan's shirt. After I do finish filling in all the shadows, I will set the layer to multiply and lower the opacity. When filling in shadows, I do try to keep in mind where the light source is. In this case, I kind of imagined it's somewhere above, a little bit to the right, so I added more shadows on the left side. It is easier to see on the arms and torso than the rest of them though, especially the face kind of just looks like how I normally do the shading on the face. Now my favorite part, the highlights in the hair. I usually draw this jagged shape wherever I think the light would be hitting the hair. I refine the shape a little bit just so it follows the flow and everything, and then I use the soft eraser to fade out one of the edges. I usually do the bottom edge. I do the same sort of technique on his beard and on his ponytail. On top of that, I have a layer set to add where I draw a few little lines, a few little dots, and fade out the bottom of those as well to make it look very shiny. A lot of times I'll add more detail to the hair, but I decided to go simpler with this picture. After I added the highlights to Hera's eyes, I did notice the colors on her face looked a little flat, so I added a little bit more color to her lips and faded out the edge of that, lowered the opacity a little so it was a little less harsh, gave it a little bit more color, but wasn't too much. I did a little bit of last minute shading on her face to make her cheekbone a little bit more defined before I moved on to the background. Now, for the background, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. Tried out a few different colors. I did like the orange. So I did try a few different brushes. I do like using this particle brush a lot when I do backgrounds, especially when I set it to add, just to give it that little bit of glowy effect. In case you haven't noticed, I really do like using add and multiply to make colors look more dramatic. Add and multiply are my best friends. Out of context, it sounds like I really like math. But anyway, I messed with layer modes a little bit until I got colors that I thought looked good. I did go back and forth on a few things before I decided what I really liked. I did feel like the background colors didn't really go well with the foreground colors, so I ended up adding a white outline around the characters. This outline though I did lower the opacity of, because when it was at full opacity it kind of made them look like stickers, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not really what I wanted for this picture. I mean, they do kind of end up looking like stickers anyway, but it's a little bit less, I think, when it's not a solid white color. I did work on the background a little bit more because I wasn't exactly happy with it yet. Tried adding a darker color to the bottom, which I did end up liking a lot. Drew in a couple little hearts just to make it cute, and then wrote in the words with my poor handwriting. Changed the color because I wasn't exactly happy with it. Struggled to write the number 2 a couple times before finally signing it and finishing off the picture. I am really happy with the way this one turned out. I think Kanan and Hera look really cute together, and I just think it looks good. They're some of my favorite characters in Star Wars, and I was glad to have a chance to draw them. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Happy Star Wars Day, and may the Force be with you.